Welcome to my channel, The Historic State. History often champions the victors, those whose strategies led to glorious, undeniable triumphs. But sometimes, the greatest minds of warfare are found not in shining armor, but in the shadows of defeat, their genius misunderstood, their brilliance dismissed. Today, we unearth the forgotten tale of a military genius, a one-eyed warrior who defied every convention of his age. His armies were peasants, his weapons were farm tools, and his tactics were considered madness by the entrenched nobility of Europe. He lost battles, yes, but each defeat was a calculated step towards a greater, unimaginable victory. He was mocked, feared, and ultimately erased from the popular narrative. But his strategies laid the groundwork for modern warfare. This is the incredible story of Jan Zizka, the one-eyed general who turned farmers into an unstoppable force and changed military history forever. NNTHE year is 1419. Bohemia, a small kingdom in the heart of Europe, is a powder keg. Religious fervor has ignited a brutal conflict known as the Hussite Wars. On one side stands the combined might of Catholic Europe. Armored knights, well-trained professional armies, vast in number and resources. On the other side, a ragtag collection of Bohemian peasants, artisans, and fervent religious reformers, known as the Hussites. They are poorly armed, untrained, and destined for slaughter. In the brutal, one-sided battles, these brave but naive peasants are routinely cut down by the superior cavalry of the Catholic Crusaders. Among them is a seasoned, pragmatic warrior named Jan Zizka, a minor noble and former mercenary now fighting for the Hussite cause. He watches the massacres with a cold, calculating eye, realizing that traditional warfare is suicide. He knows there must be another way. Jan Zizka was no stranger to combat. He had fought as a mercenary for years, a master of conventional skirmishes, a ruthless survivor. But during one brutal clash, he lost an eye, a wound that marked him forever. This physical loss, however, gifted him a new kind of vision. Forced to rely less on sight and more on intellect, he began to question everything he knew about warfare. He devoured ancient military texts, studying the tactics of the Greeks and Romans. He realized that the Hussites couldn't beat the knights at their own game. They needed a new game altogether. He looked at his army, farmers, bakers, carpenters, and saw not weakness but untapped potential. Jan Zizka gathered his disheartened followers. He wasn't a charismatic orator. He spoke plainly, brutally honestly. "We cannot fight them like knights," he told them, holding up a farm flail, a simple tool for threshing grain, but now adapted with spikes. "Their armor is thick, their horses fast, but their armor can be cracked, their horses stopped." His radical ideas sounded like madness to men used to traditional formations. He spoke of using farm wagons as moving fortresses, of massed hand cannons, of coordinated peasant militias. Many looked at him with bewilderment, some with outright distrust. He was challenging centuries of military doctrine. Jan Zizka's revolutionary proposals were met with fierce resistance, not just from the enemy, but from within his own ranks. The Hussite nobility, still clinging to medieval ideals of chivalry and honor, scoffed at his peasant tactics. Wagon forts, hand cannons manned by farmers, "These are not the ways of warriors," they cried. They believed in meeting the enemy in open battle, in glorious charges. Zizka argued that glory was for fools, and survival was for the intelligent. His ideas were seen as a sign of weakness, a lack of courage. They wanted to follow tradition. Zizka wanted to win. The friction was constant, often erupting into bitter arguments. Zizka was often isolated, a prophet in his own land, his genius misunderstood. None, undeterred by the mockery, Zizka began to train his loyal few. He taught his peasants to be soldiers, not by drilling them in knightly combat, but by teaching them to fight as peasants. He transformed mundane farm wagons into mobile fortresses, the famous Wagenburg. These wagons, chained together in a square or circle, became an impenetrable wall, bristling with spikes and small, primitive cannons. Inside, his peasant soldiers, armed with modified farm tools, long flails that could smash a knight's skull, sharpened scythes that could disembowel a horse, became an unyielding force. He drilled them relentlessly in coordinated maneuvers, turning them from a disorganized mob into a disciplined, innovative fighting force. He embraced gunpowder, arming his men with noisy, terrifying hand cannons that, though inaccurate, terrified enemy horses and men alike. His first real test came at the Battle of Sudemer in 1420. Zizka's smaller force found itself cornered near a pond, a seemingly disastrous position. The enemy, a vast army of crusaders, charged confidently. It looked like another Hussite massacre, but as the heavily armored knights thundered forward, they found themselves facing not a chaotic mob, but an immovable steel fortress. Zizka had positioned his Wagenburg perfectly. The knights' horses faltered, trapped in the soft ground near the pond, their charges broken against the unyielding wall of wagons. Then, Zizka unleashed his unconventional arsenal. A deafening volley of hand cannons tore into the dense enemy ranks, scattering horses and men. His peasants, safe behind the wagons, unleashed a devastating flurry of flails and scythes, slaughtering the trapped knights. The crusaders, bewildered by this new, terrifying form of warfare, broke and fled. Zizka, the one-eyed general, had turned initial defeat into a shocking victory, using nothing but ingenuity and determined peasants. This was just the beginning. Zizka's tactics evolved with every battle. He wasn't just defensive, he used the Wagenburg as a mobile offensive platform, breaking enemy lines and then unleashing his own cavalry to exploit the chaos. He became a master of terrain, using hills, rivers, and forests to his advantage, forcing his heavily armored enemies into positions where their traditional strengths became fatal weaknesses. He lost his other eye in a later battle, becoming completely blind, yet he continued to command, relying on his lieutenants to describe the battlefield, his strategic mind as sharp as ever. His enemies simply couldn't comprehend his genius. They called him the terrible Hussite, a demonic force. But his own men adored him, knowing he alone could lead them to victory against impossible odds. Zizka's legend grew with every impossible victory. From the Battle of Kutna Hora to the Battle of Tachov, he consistently defeated the combined might of European crusaders, turning heavily armed, professional armies into panicked, routed mobs. He was never truly defeated in a pitched battle. He died, not by an enemy blade, but from a fever in 1424. His death was a catastrophic blow to the Hussites. Without his tactical genius, their revolutionary army slowly lost its edge, eventually succumbing to internal divisions and external pressure. But his legacy was far from forgotten by those who studied the art of war. And centuries later, military historians and strategists would finally recognize Zizka's brilliance. His Wagenburg tactics, his emphasis on combined arms, infantry, artillery, and later cavalry working together, his use of terrain, and his ability to turn a defensive position into a launching pad for attack. These were the hallmarks of modern warfare. He was a precursor to Napoleon, to the Blitzkrieg, to the very concept of mobile, coordinated combat. He proved that technological innovation, even crude as a farm wagon, combined with strategic genius, could overcome overwhelming numerical and traditional superiority. He taught the world that the most effective armies are not necessarily the ones with the most resources, but the ones with the most adaptable minds. Jan Zizka, the one-eyed general, remains a forgotten giant of military history. His genius was misunderstood in his own time, his methods ridiculed as barbaric, his victories dismissed as mere luck, but his legacy lives on, a testament to the power of unconventional thinking, the courage to defy tradition, and the profound truth that true genius often shines brightest in the face of overwhelming odds. He built an army from peasants, armed them with farm tools, and left an indelible mark on the art of war, proving that the most powerful weapon is often not steel or gunpowder, but an idea ahead of its time. NNT, thank you for watching The Historic State. If this incredible story of a misunderstood genius and the revolution he sparked moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Because here, we believe that history's greatest minds often begin as its most ridiculed outsiders.